My name is Tanya Sanders, and I recently completed my dissertation for a PhD in the School of Media and Communications. Basically, my desire was to find out why students aren't engaged. Why are we struggling with boredom, academic boredom to be specific, in the school system? I interviewed 30 plus teachers, asking them about their lessons and their background, the way they felt about certain things related to the structure, the framework of what they have to do throughout the day. I also interviewed 30 plus students, 18 and older, anyone that was a student at some point. I asked them questions in regards to engagement. And I came up with this very amazing finding that I wasn't expecting, is that over and over and over again, teacher or student, they said that the most important thing was that engaged them was a connection, whether it be to a person, teacher, district, to your school district, in a way that you're proud to be that ram or that eagle or that whatever mascot you can insert there. So they were proud and connected to that district. They were proud and connected to the teacher, and they were proud and connected to the content. So that was the glaring find that I had, that people desire connections and relationships. The second thing that was just below that was the relevance. Not only did people want to be connected to their teacher or to the content, it had to be relevant to them. So if I first get to know my students, I get a relationship there, then I can make my content relevant to them. The curriculum will make sense to them because I'm connecting it to something that I know about them. And then the third thing just below that was the amount of work that students will put in. If they're connected to you, if they have a relationship to the class, if they have a relationship with the instructor, then, and it's relevant to them and you're making it relevant to their life, then they will do anything for you. Rigor. So they will put the work in if you place it before them. So basically what I was doing is trying to figure out how to engage students through learning design. So what can we do instructionally in our classroom to make that happen? So during this time, I'm going to be talking a little bit about connections and relationships in regards to schools and with students. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the key components of getting to know your students. And I've discovered about 2 phases. There's probably other things that you can explore on that. But I'm going to be talking about 2 phases separately, and I'm going to give you examples of technology that you can use to engage your students. Phase 1, phase 2, getting to know them. And then the last slide you'll see will be include the code and another link, which you can see on this slide, that there is a short URL, a tiny URL that you can use for a live Q&A. Both of those links go to the same place. So you click on whichever one is going to work on your Wi-Fi. If you're in a district, sometimes tiny URLs blocked, sometimes short URL. If you're having difficulty getting hold of me through the Q&A, through the Google document, feel free to email me at sanders@nwoet.org. And you can use that during this session, or when we're not in this session. If 2-3 days later you have some questions for me, feel free to email me at that email address included in this. Okay, so the professional connections that I'm talking about are between, just for this portion of what I'm doing, is between teacher and student. There are other aspects to my findings where I think we need to have relationships all across the district, district to community, admin to admin, and it also goes within each other, teacher to teacher, student to student, but then it also goes admin to teachers, teachers to student, and so on and so forth. But the one that I'm talking about here is related to the classroom instructionally, so teacher to student and student to student. I think it's very important that not only do we get to know our students, but also that the students get to know each other. So this relationship that we're talking about is a formal relationship, because anytime we're talking about relationships in school districts, that can get a little messy in the the connotation of it. Establishing relationships with students. That's why I continually mix the words connection and relationship, because connection has less of a negative sound to it. But this is a formal, professional relationship, professional connection, formal connection that you're having. The first thing we have to understand is that when kids come into our classroom, they're human. And, I remember in my studies when first becoming a teacher, they're just like, the students are a blank slate and we're here to write their story and write that information and give them all that information that they need. That isn't true. They're human and they've lived a life right up until they've come to us, not an entire life, but they've lived moments in their life. They are not a blank slate. They have a complex story that they're holding on to. They have different components from the person sitting next to them. They may have similar things that are going on in their lives, but for the most part, every student is a separate, complex human being. They're also very empathetic. They understand their story. We need to recognize their story and we need to acknowledge their truth. There is a threshold of learning that is kind of achieved through this that explains the connection relationship thing and why it's so important to students. We break that threshold of learning. It's no longer this barrier, this wall where we are up in the front of the classroom and the student is the banking concept. The student is a receptacle to be filled. It's a reciprocated process where we're learning along with the students. So they break that wall, they break that threshold of learning, and they're learning along with us. It's a team effort with the teacher. So they place themselves near the teacher in a professional fashion that we're all learning that knowledge together. And it's almost like this hidden part of it where we allow them to think for themselves through that connection because they have a relationship with the content as well. And then in turn, the students become co-learners. Here are the two ways that you can get to know your students. So of course, learning style, and there are some ideas about learning style and how it doesn't exist. And even if the research shows that it does or does not exist, the important part is that we know people prefer to learn differently. Everybody can learn based on the research any way that we put in front of them. It's just whether they're stubborn or don't want to learn a certain way. So we need to get to know the students first through their learning style. We need to understand how do they gain knowledge? What are their abilities? What are their potential? We need to understand that so that we can alter it. And not in a way that we gossip or complain or have negative thoughts about that student or complain to other teachers, but to use that information to help the student develop or understand the knowledge. If we understand that they learn better through watching videos or through a repeat instruction, then we can give them the videos, or we can give them the content over and over and over again, or in a way that they can study it, that they'll understand it, or offer it in a story, or offer it in a slideshow, or allow them to learn through whatever means it takes for them to learn. We also need to get to know their story. Okay, so we get to know how they learn, we understand their potential, their abilities, but then we also need to know their interests. We need to get to know their personality, what they accept, what they don't accept, their background, where do they come from. We need to understand their culture. We need to create this connection between their cognitive state and their personal being, and understand their story a little bit more. And through this, we can, or how we can do this, I'm sorry, not through this, but we can do this in two phases. So we can understand their learning style, we can understand their personal background, their personality, all those things through two phases. And phase one is just basically getting to know them. I do an exercise in my sessions, of course, with adults, that I call it speed dating, and it is exactly what it is. And what I'm saying is the participants come in and they're all seated in a particular place, and they have to communicate with that person to get to know them. So this would be an example of student to student connection. So we're having students get to know each other through questioning. It would be a structure that would be controlled by the teacher, but we in turn would get to know them, and you could have a Google Doc that they would be filling out. You could have it being recorded, or they have to create a video together at the end, or they have to create a podcast about each other at the end. There's so many things that you could do just to get to know them. You also could have them create the website. I have that as number 2. I've done this with teachers before, but I think it'd be really fun with students where they have to find a song, appropriate song, that through the lyrics, through the rhythm, through the music, how does that student connect to that? And they have to find a song that connects with another person in their classroom. It and they You could either pair them up, and there's totally don't know each other, and then they have to research and find a song that connects them. But then after they have that song, then they create like a 30-second video explaining why they're connected through that song. They have to discover the connection first. I used to love doing autobiographies with my students, reading the chapters that they would create. It would definitely would give me an idea of who they are, their background, gain some knowledge about them. And then there's other tools like Glogster. You can use like Adobe Sparks. You can use things like any video editing program, Premiere or iMovie, to create videos. WeVideo, I use that in the free form of that. You also could use some online Web 2.0 tools to do the podcast. And then Google tools are always an option for the students to use. With Google Drawing, they could draw a picture of themselves and share it with the teacher, and put captions with it and explain exactly how the Google Drawing represents themselves or their friend that they just met. Padlet wall is always amazing to do with students, because you can take little sticky notes. If you're not familiar with Padlet, that's number 3 on the right hand side. If you're not familiar with Padlet, basically it used to be called Well Wisher, and it's almost as if you have like this digital wall and you paste these little digital sticky notes on it, telling someone about yourself or telling about someone else. And students can even comment, add pictures, add video, add audio. It just depends on what version you have. The free version I've always used is great for this. But the paid version, of course, has some other options. I talked a little bit about Glogster already, but that's basically making a multimedia movie poster of students. They can put audio and video on there and pictures, and it's kind of creating a poster of themselves. These are great introductory beginning of the year, after Christmas, beginning of a semester kind of activities to get more in depth of what the students like and how they learn. A documentary is awesome. That could be done throughout the year, their experiences using physical video cameras, and or documenting something on like a screencast, or documenting it through QuickTime, or whatever other option you have. There are so many programs out there that allow you to record little clips, snippets of video, and then place them into something, like I said, like Adobe Spark, or you can even do flip grids of your life. That'll help you get to know the students a little bit more. Next, I'm going to talk about phase 2. Okay, so the phase 1 was getting to know the student in a way that's just basic getting to know them, having them do assignments that tell you more about them. Phase 2 is just a little bit deeper than that, where you're still getting to know the student, about the student and things that they like, but you're doing it through the curriculum. So you have the standard, you have the content, you have the assignment. For instance, if we're coding with dash and dot, then basically we have the students have dash and dot crawl through or navigate through a set of blocks to get them to a certain thing that detects a discovery about the student, like a mystery. So dash and dot are trying to, unveil the mystery of you, and at the end it's going to be something that we don't know about you. So you're working through this thing, this difficult concept of coding dash or dot, or whichever, Scratch. Maybe it's you're using Scratch and you're having your little guy kind of bounce through and find you, or you're having it reveal something about you. You could do that with app development as well. The app could be about you, and you find out something new about that person each time as they develop the app. So it's a little bit more difficult of an assignment. It's not just recalling who they are. They have to think at a different on two things. They have to think about how they connect to themselves, and also they have to think about the tool that they're using to get to know you or get to know them. Fractions, you can have the students create a fraction of something in their life, like 2/3 of their allowance goes to whatever thing that they like. So you're getting to know them through math, through the thing that you're doing. They could bring something in and break it up for everybody. It could be their favorite food, and they could do it in fractions so that we get to know them. It's just neat to be able to learn through them. Other things, like if you just read a book, even if at any grade level, they have a book that they finished now, or it could be a chapter. Now add yourself into that scenario. Who is your friend? Who you're going to hang out? Write one scene that is going to be you talking to that character, being involved with that character. And then the student has to learn a little bit. We get to learn a little bit more about the student through that story. I like Alphabet Me for the younger kids. Obviously, if the students are already learning their alphabet or writing things down, then they have to associate the letter with them or tell a story about A. I was walking on a trip with my family and ants crawled in my shoe and bit me, something of that sort. Have them do book reports that interest them and then explain why it's connected to them, why it interests them. Geography and economy, if you are in social studies, have them take a trip to that place and what would they do and how would they explore it, and looking at the past, why would it be something they would like or not like? Even if they don't like it, if they hate a place, then why do they not like that place? What is it in you that makes you not like that place? So phase 2 is still getting to know the person, but you're getting to know them through the content, through the curriculum, and you're making it something that's difficult rather than just build a website explaining who you are or do a podcast about yourself or your friend. We're not just doing that base knowledge of finding out about them. We're taking these difficult concepts that are already in our standards, already in our curriculum, and we're connecting it through what we want to learn about the student. So we're learning about the student through that. So this has been our little time with creating connections using technology. I have a lot of other things I really enjoy doing with this. I have anywhere from a 1-day class to a 3-day class that I associate with this, and we build the lesson, we build the curriculum, and we continually grow or evolve that curriculum, getting to know them continually, and then adding the relevance and the rigor information to that as well. But here's your code. You made it. You made it through the 20 minutes with me. As always, you can email me. I really enjoy sharing my passion about not only the creating connections and relationship, but also gamification. That was my learning design, that along with flipped learning or project-based learning, that helped me understand the engagement portion as well, because how can we get to know students through project-based learning, or how can we get to know students through flipped learning? So here's your code, CR153, and here is the form that you go to. It's a GU and it still works. I've tested it. You can get 0.5 contact hours and a PD certificate. Then again, here's the Q&A. You can always question and answer through sanders@nwet.org, but also you can go to that short URL and that tiny URL, and I will answer your questions as you're listening to this. So I really appreciate you coming and learning about connections. They're so important. We just need to take that step into moving towards getting to know our students and developing a relationship, not only with us, but with the curriculum. Thanks. So here are some tools that I talked about throughout the video. Glogster, WeVideo, any Google tool that you can think of will probably help make connections with your students. Adobe Spark, Adobe Premiere, After Effects, basically video editing software, which also WeVideo could probably be included in that. iPad apps, there's so many of them. Toontastic, Doodle Buddy, Joy Doodle. Just depends on what you're trying to do with the getting to know the students and the connections. Flipgrid, Prezi, Buncee, Canvas Drawing, Sketchpad, and then also any kind of recording tool that you're used to using, Chrome Recorder, Audio Boo. I'm more than happy to show you how to use any of these programs. In fact, most of these videos I already have screencast tutorials created for them that I've sent to other teachers, helping them understand how to create connections and relationships with their students through these tools. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at sanders@nwoet.org. Thanks again.